Pastor Jordan here. A few years ago, I was watching a documentary about Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin was the first American Asian basketball player to play in the NBA. But his road to getting to the NBA was not an easy one. From being a child to going to university, and when he just thought his dream was going to come true, he was sent down to the G League. Now the G League is the NBA's farm team, and it's nothing like the NBA. You have to ride on buses instead of flying on airplanes, and the hotels you stay in are nothing like the NBA players stay in. And he said the biggest challenge he had in the G League was actually when he would play is that everyone played for themselves. No one played as a team. So even though they were traveling as a team and they would go on the court as a team, they didn't play as a team because every individual was playing for themselves. They wanted to be seen. And in the book of Corinthians, it talks about here where everyone is now dividing themselves up into different factions, and where everyone thinks they're right, and where everyone really wants to be seen as being in the right. I want to read to you a few verses here from the book of 1 Corinthians. We'll start at verse 10. It says, 1 Corinthians verse 10 says, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, that there may be no divisions among you, but that you may be perfectly united in mind and thought. My brothers and sisters, some from Chloe's household have informed me that there are quarrels among you. What I mean is this: one of you says, I follow Paul, another, I follow Apollos, another, I follow Cephas, still another, I follow Christ. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I did not baptize any of you except Crispus and Gaius, so that no one can say that you were baptized in my name. Now Paul here has been informed that there is big divisions in the church at Corinth. This is the church that he helped to found and really helped to start. And now he hears that there's big divisions. And really the word that it uses here about quarrels is actually really not the right word for it, because they were really fighting. They really felt that they were in the right. And each group had picked their own leader, and without the leader's permission, and just said, I follow after this person. And Paul here is surprised to find out there's a group that says that, well, they follow Paul, and Paul's the right one. He's the only one that people should listen to. And he finds that there's another group that some were saying that they follow after Apollos, and others were saying they follow after Cephas, and each group felt they were right. And this has now become an all-out war in the church, where people are no longer talking to each other. They've divided up into their own groups, and each group thinks that they're in the right. And this is a huge problem for Paul. He sees it's a huge problem for the church, as the church will become ineffective because there's a tear in relationship. And this is exactly what happens when there's division in relationships, when there's fighting in relationships, that relationships get torn apart. And it's really only through mending them and bringing healing that we can see these relationships brought back together. You can remember last year I saw a social media post from a friend of mine, and after watching it I was really irritated to the point that I reacted right away. Now usually I don't respond right away to social media posts, but right away I put a pretty strong comment, actually a really strong comment, that afterwards I had to remove. And I can remember afterwards, talking to my friend, and he couldn't understand why I reacted so strongly. I realized that I misjudged him and misjudged the post. And I had to go to him and actually talk to him. And actually, after us having a conversation, we were able to make amends and bring a relationship back together. But if I didn't do that, we could have had real problems over one post and one comment. And sometimes so many relationships can be broken down over things that are not really important. In the church here, it wasn't really important who people preferred as a teacher, who they liked better as a pastor. But this had become such a division in the church that people were divided over it, that they wouldn't even talk to each other over it, that they were fighting over it because of who they followed. And sometimes in our relationships, we can have a break in relationship. And this is what Paul said to the church here. He said, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, that there may be no divisions among you, but that you may be perfectly united in mind and thought. So there's really three things here. First is what you say. Do we watch what we say? Are we paying attention to what we say? Sometimes we can be so reactive in the words that we say, we don't really realize the power in our words. We don't really realize how much pain we can bring with our words. And so Paul says here, first of all, is what are you saying to each other? Is watch what you say. If you want to have unity, if you don't want to have division, is watch the words that you say. The other two things he says here is watch what you think. That what's going on in your mind and in your thoughts. It says here is that watch what is going on in your mind. Is what are the thoughts that you have about people? Is when we see different polls or we see that different things, opinions that people have, are we reacting very strongly in the way that we think about them? Or are we even cursing them in our mind? Are we thinking very negative thoughts about them in our mind? And Paul says here, he addresses these things as what are you saying, what are you thinking, and what are you believing about people? Really, we need to address all of them. And really, this division that Paul's trying to heal, he's speaking to each person as individuals, as brothers and sisters. And each person had a choice if they were going to begin to speak positively, if they were going to start to speak in love about their brothers and sisters. Now, I want to encourage you might have a break in relationship. You might have relationships that need healing. And I think it begins with us as individuals. Rather than looking to the other person, is what are we saying about ourselves? That's what Paul said, is he started with the group that held him in highest honor. He said, I wasn't crucified for you. I wasn't baptized for you. He brought them back to Jesus, the relationship with Jesus. And he said, don't hold me in high regard. I'm just a servant. Is that don't think of me more highly than you ought to. And he broke down his group, first of all, his own faction, those that held him in high honor. And really, he started working on himself first. So I want to encourage you is that if there's relationships that are broken, we might look at other people, think they should do something. But what are we saying? What are we thinking? I also want to encourage you, if you have not joined us in the Bible app, is that it's not too late. You can click the link below. We are journeying through the book of 1 Corinthians, where we will also learn about all that Paul wanted to teach the church at Corinth. He starts off here talking about relationships, but he'll go on to talk about other major issues in the church. And I don't want you to miss out on it. So if you're not in the Bible plan, I want you to click the link below to join the Bible plan. I also want to encourage you in your relationship. There's things that you can do to make amends, is that step out, be the first one. Just like Paul was, is that he made the first step in saying, look at what you say, look at what you think, and make the first step. So I want to encourage you to do that. Don't wait for the next person. You be the one that steps out first. Correct what you think and what you say first. And so I pray that as you do that, you'll see God's blessing in your own life and in your relationships. God bless you.